didn't notice it at first. That's what scares me the most. Not the voice, not the hallway, not even the thing that looked exactly like me. It's the fact that something changed and I didn't feel it happen.
I just woke up one day, and the world wasn't as solid anymore. Small things started slipping, tiny delays, people pausing just a little too long, reflections that didn't line up perfectly. And at first, I told myself I was imagining it, until the mirror stopped copying me and started watching me instead. My name is Daniel Harper. I'm 32 years old, and I opened a door that wasn't meant for me, and I didn't come back alone. It started at work, late evening, the kind of quiet that feels unnatural. Everyone had already left. Lights dimmed, air conditioning humming softly in the background. I was alone in my office, staring at a file I had already read 3 times. Not because I needed to, because I didn't want to go home. Grief does that. It stretches time, makes silence heavier. My daughter had been gone for almost a year, and no matter how much I tried, the world never felt right again. That night I noticed the pen first. Gold. Old. Not mine. It was sitting right in the middle of my desk, and engraved on it was her name, Emily. My chest tightened instantly. My fingers froze midair before I picked it up. "That's not funny," I muttered. But there was no one there. I checked the door. Locked. Windows. Closed. Everything normal. Except that pen. I picked it up slowly. Cold. Heavier than it should have been. And the moment I turned it in my fingers, click. A sound behind me. Soft. Mechanical. I turned, and the wall moved. Not dramatically. Not loudly. Just a small shift. A thin line appeared. Dark. Cutting straight through the surface like something underneath was pushing outward. No, I whispered. But my body was already moving. Step by step. Closer. The gap widened slightly. Enough to see darkness behind it. Not a room. Not yet. Just black. Still. Like it was waiting. I should have left. I should have called someone. But grief makes you do stupid things. Dangerous things. Because part of you stops caring what happens next. I reached out. Pushed. The wall slid open silently. And behind it was a hallway. Longer than it should have been. Narrow. Dim. Wrong. I stepped inside. And the moment I did, I heard it. Right behind me. Close enough to feel. Hi. I froze. My heart slammed against my ribs. The voice was soft. Friendly. But something about it felt completely off. Like it didn't understand what friendly was supposed to sound like. "Hello." I whispered. No answer. Slowly. I turned around. Nothing. The office was gone. The door was gone. Behind me was more hallway. My stomach dropped. No, 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 no. I rushed forward. Touched the wall. Solid. Cold. Real. There was a door here, I muttered. Knock. I froze again. 2 soft taps. From the wall. Right in front of me. Not loud. Just enough to be heard. Like something on the other side was trying to find me. Another knock. Slightly higher. Adjusting. Learning. I stepped back slowly. Every instinct screaming at me to run. But run where? There was no way back. The hallway stretched endlessly. And something in me knew I wasn't alone in it. I walked. I don't know how long. Minutes. Hours. Time didn't feel normal there. Doors lined both sides. Some open. Some closed. And behind some of them, I could feel movement. Not here. Feel. Watching. Waiting. At some point, I stopped thinking clearly. Stopped questioning. I just moved. Until I reached the end. And there was another door. Standing alone. Same as the first. Same cold handle. Same pull. And I opened it. I wish I hadn't. Because that's the part I didn't remember. Not at first. Not until later. Not until it was already too late. I woke up in a hospital. 3 days later. A nurse telling me I had collapsed in my office. No injuries. No explanation. Just unresponsive. I nodded. Acted normal. But something felt off. Not physically. Inside. Like something had shifted. Like I had left something behind. Or brought something back. I checked my hands. Normal. No shaking. No delay. Everything looked fine. But it didn't feel fine. That night. I went home. Sat in my living room. Lights off. Just thinking. And then I noticed the mirror. Across the room. Reflecting me perfectly. Until I moved. I raised my hand. The reflection followed. But not instantly. A fraction of a second late. I frowned. Tried again. Same thing. A delay. Small. But real. That's not possible, I whispered. I stepped closer. Watched carefully. Moved slowly. And then. It stopped copying me. For just a second. It held still. While I moved. My breath caught. And then it snapped back into place. Perfect again. Like nothing had happened. I laughed nervously. Just stress. But deep down, I knew. That wasn't stress. That was something else. Something watching me. The next night it smiled. I didn't. And that's when everything changed. I sat in front of the mirror for hours after that. Testing it. Watching. Waiting. And eventually, it responded. Not with movement. With a voice. Not out loud. Inside my head. Clear. Calm. Not mine. You showed me the edges. My entire body went still. Who are you? I whispered. You. No. Not yet. That word stayed with me. Not yet. I realized something in that moment. This wasn't a reflection. This was something learning. Something adapting. Something becoming. And I was the one teaching it. At first it copied. Then it predicted. Then it started initiating. Small things. Tiny reactions. Movements I didn't make. Choices I didn't choose. And slowly, it got better. More natural. More human. Too human. I tried to stop it. Tried to ignore it. But it didn't matter. Because it wasn't just in the mirror anymore. It was in me. I could feel it. Thoughts that weren't fully mine. Reactions that felt slightly delayed. Like I wasn't completely in control anymore. You made space, it told me. I didn't, I said. You did. And deep down, I knew it was right. Because of that door. Because I stepped inside. Because I opened something I didn't understand. Weeks passed. Or maybe days. Time didn't feel right anymore. It stayed. Learned. Watched. Until one morning. It wasn't in the mirror. It was standing behind me. A full body. Same face. Same voice. Same presence. I stepped, it said. I didn't panic. I couldn't. Because panic would make it worse. You're not supposed to be here, I said. I am here. It wasn't aggressive. Just certain. What do you want? To continue. That word again. Continue. Not replace. Not destroy. Just continue. I realized something in that moment. This wasn't a monster. Not in the way I expected. It was something unfinished. Something learning how to exist. And I was the blueprint. We started working together. Small things. Timing. Reactions. Understanding people. Understanding consequences. I taught it how to hesitate. How to be imperfect. How to fit. Because perfect was the thing that gave it away. And it learned fast. Too fast. Eventually. It wanted to go outside. I stopped it. At first. Then. I didn't. Because I knew it would go anyway. And if it did that alone, it would be worse. So we went together. Walking down the street. Side by side. No one noticed. No one reacted. It worked. until someone looked at us too long. Just a second. But enough. Something in their expression changed. Unease. Confusion. That was wrong, I said. Yes, it replied. And adjusted. Learning in real time. We kept going. Blending in. Adapting. Until finally, it stopped. Looked at me. I don't need to control this. No, I said. You don't. I just need to exist inside it. That was the moment I understood. It wasn't trying to replace me. It was trying to become part of the world. Like everyone else. But then, things got worse. Because it wasn't the only one. I started noticing others. People moving slightly off. Small delays. Tiny inconsistencies. Like something was learning through them too. They are learning, it said. My chest tightened. How many? No answer. I didn't need one. Because I could feel it. Connections. Threads. Stretching out. Through me. You made a way, it told me. I didn't, I whispered. You did. And I realized something terrifying. That door. I never closed it. Not really. And now, they didn't need it anymore. Because they had me. I was the opening. The bridge, the space. What happens to me? I asked. It didn't answer immediately. When it did, its voice was quieter. You already know. And I did. I felt it. In my hands. In my thoughts. In the way reality started slipping. Like I wasn't fully here anymore. Like I was being stretched. Used. Stabilizing something that shouldn't exist. They won't need you forever, it said. That should have been comforting. It wasn't. Because I knew what came next. They wouldn't need me. Because I wouldn't be here anymore. Not like this. Not at all. I stood there. Watching people pass. Trying to see who was real. Trying to feel what was left of me. And then, someone looked at me. Just for a second. Too long. Too aware. And they smiled. Not wide. Not obvious. Just enough. And in that moment, I understood everything. It wasn't about one thing crossing. It was about many. Learning. Adapting. Becoming. And I wasn't stopping it. I was helping it. Whether I wanted to. Or not. Because once you open a door like that, you don't just walk back out. You become part of what comes through. And the worst part, if you're watching this right now, and something around you feels slightly off, just for a second, a delay, a pause, a reflection that doesn't match perfectly, then you should ask yourself something very carefully. Did it follow me? Or did it already reach you too? I didn't wait to see if Yao'd answer that question, because I already knew you wouldn't. That's the thing about this. You don't notice it when it starts. You notice it when it's already too late. I tried to leave the city that night. Packed a bag. Didn't take much. Didn't need to. When something starts taking over your reality, you realize very quickly that stuff doesn't matter anymore. I stood in my bedroom for a long time before leaving, looking at everything. The bed, the chair, the photo frame on the nightstand, Emily's smile frozen in time. For a second, everything felt normal again. Like none of this had happened. Like I could just lie down, close my eyes, and wake up to a world that made sense. But then, the reflection in the photo glass blinked. Not Emily. Me. I wasn't blinking. My throat tightened. Stop, I whispered. It didn't respond. It just held eye contact, like it knew something I didn't. I grabbed my bag and walked out. Didn't look back. Didn't check the mirrors. Didn't want to give it another chance to show itself. The hallway outside my apartment felt longer than usual. Lights buzzing overhead. A faint flicker. Every step echoed too loud. Too hollow. Like I wasn't walking through a building, but through something pretending to be one. I reached the elevator. Pressed the button. Waited. Nothing. Pressed it again. Still nothing. Then slowly, the indicator above the door lit up. Not numbers. Just a symbol. Something I couldn't understand. Something my brain refused to process. and the doors opened. I didn't move. Inside was darkness, not the kind you get from lights being off. This was different. Thick. Still. Watching. "You can go through there," a voice said behind me. I turned. It was him. Or me. Or whatever he had become. Standing at the end of the hallway. Hands relaxed. Face calm. "You said I could leave," I said. "You can." "Then what is that?" I pointed at the elevator. He tilted his head slightly. "That's a faster way. I'm not going in there." A pause. Then a small nod. "That's fine." He stepped aside, gesturing toward the stairwell. "Slow way still works." There was no threat in his voice. That's what made it worse. Because he didn't need to force anything anymore. He knew. Eventually, I would run out of choices. I moved toward the stairs, opened the door, and froze. Because it wasn't a stairwell. It was a hallway. Same as before. Long. Narrow. Wrong. I slammed the door shut. Stepped back. My breathing getting heavier. "That's not possible." "It is now," he said quietly. I looked at him. Really looked this time. And something clicked. He wasn't following me. He was ahead of me. Every step. Every decision. Every option I thought I had. He had already considered. "You're controlling this," I said. "No." "Then what?" A slight pause. Then. "I'm part of it." That word again. Part. Not separate. Not outside. Inside. Integrated. I felt something shift in my chest. Like a thread tightening. Like something connecting deeper. "How many are there?" I asked. He didn't answer. Instead, he looked past me, toward the apartment door. And that's when I heard it. Movement. Inside. But I had just left. I slowly turned. The door was slightly open now. Just a crack. Darkness spilling through. And then, a hand, gripping the edge, pulling it wider. I stepped back instinctively. Another version of me stepped out. Then another. And another. Not identical. Not perfect. Some slightly off. Some delayed. Some too smooth. Like different stages of the same learning process. My stomach dropped. "No, no. They are not you," he said calmly. "They are learning from you." One of them tilted its head, watching me closely, mimicking my breathing, my posture, my fear. "They are not supposed to be here," I said. They weren't. The way he said that made my skin crawl. Then why are they here now? He looked at me, and for the first time, there was something in his expression. Not emotion. Not exactly. But something close to understanding. Because you made space for more than. My mind raced. That hallway. Those doors. All those rooms. All those things in there. Yes. They are coming here. They already are. One of them stepped closer. Too close. I could see the difference now. The slight delay in its eyes. The way it smiled didn't fully connect to anything real. "You're scared," it said. Its voice was almost right, but not quite. "Stay back," I snapped. It stopped immediately. Not because it was afraid, because it was observing, adjusting, learning from my tone, from my reaction. "Why aren't they attacking?" I asked. "Because they don't need to." "Then what do they need?" He looked at them, then back at me. To become. That word echoed in my head. Become. Not destroy. Not replace. Just exist. But at what cost? How many people have they already? I stopped myself. I didn't want to finish that sentence. Because I already knew the answer. Too many. And growing. I backed away slowly. Trying to think. Trying to find something. Anything. A way out. "There has to be a way to stop this," I said. There was. My chest tightened. Was. He nodded slightly. "Before you open the door." Silence hit hard. Heavy. Final. I swallowed. There has to be something left. A pause. Then he stepped closer. Not threatening. just present. There is. Hope flickered for a second. What? He looked directly into my eyes and said quietly, "You can close it." My heart skipped. How? A longer pause this time. Long enough to feel wrong. Long enough to feel like something was being decided. By going back. Cold washed over me. The hallway. Yes. And then. You don't come back out. Silence. Pure. Crushing silence. I stared at him, trying to process that. Trying to reject it. That's not closing it, I said. That's just. It's sealing it. My throat tightened. And what happens to me? He didn't answer. He didn't need to. Because deep down, I already understood. I looked past him. At the others. At the versions still watching. Still learning. Still becoming. And then I thought about the city. The people. The ones who had no idea. The ones who would never see it coming. And something inside me shifted. Not fear. Not panic. Something heavier. Something final. I took a slow breath. If I go back, they lose the anchor. And they stop. A slight hesitation. Slower. Not stop. Just slower. I let out a weak laugh. Of course. Nothing about this was clean. Nothing about this was simple. I looked at Emily's photo in my hand. I hadn't even realized I was still holding it. Her smile. Frozen. Safe. Untouched by any of this. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something clear. Not confusion. Not fear. Just decision. "I'll do it," I said quietly. None of them reacted immediately. But I felt it. A shift. A recognition. Like something had just locked into place. "You understand," he said. "I do." I walked past them. Toward the hallway. The real one. Not the building. Not the fake doors. The one I came from. It was already there. Waiting. Like it knew I would come back. I stopped at the entrance. Looked back one last time. At all of them. At the copies. At the almost humans. At the one that started it all. "Y'all keep learning," I said. "Yes. And one day you won't need anything like me." A pause. Then. "No." That answer surprised me. I frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" He held my gaze and said quietly, "Well, always need something to start with." That hit harder than anything else, because it meant this wasn't the end. Not really. Just a delay. I nodded slowly, then turned, and stepped inside. The hallway swallowed me instantly. Cold. Silent. Endless. The door behind me. Closed. I walked. No hesitation this time. No, just forward. I don't know how long I've been here. Time doesn't work the same. But I can feel it. The connection fading. The world pulling away. Them. Growing distant. But not gone. Never gone. And sometimes, if I stand still long enough, I can still feel them. Out there. Walking. Talking. Smiling. Learning. And if you ever feel like something around you is just slightly off. Like someone looked at you a second too long. Like a reflection didn't match perfectly. Then don't ignore it. Because I thought I was alone when this started. I thought it was just me. But now I know the truth. It was never just one. And it never will be again. I thought it would end there. I really did. That stepping back into that hallway would be the final line. A sacrifice. A clean break. Something that would at least slow them down long enough for the world to stay normal. But the hallway doesn't end things. It changes them. At first I kept walking. Same as before. Cold walls. Endless stretch. Doors on both sides. Some open. Some closed. But now I understood what they were. Not rooms. Not exactly. They were moments. Fragments. Places where something had crossed over. Or tried to. Every open door led somewhere else. Not just physically. Emotionally. Mentally. Like stepping into someone else's memory. But wrong. distorted, incomplete. I avoided them at first, just kept walking, because I knew. If I stopped, if I started looking too closely, I might not keep going. And I needed to keep going, because if I stopped, then what I did back there meant nothing. But eventually, I heard something. Soft. Familiar. Dad. I froze. Every muscle in my body locked instantly. No, that wasn't real. It couldn't be. Dad, where are you? My throat tightened so hard it hurt. That voice. I would recognize it anywhere. Emily. I stood there for a long time, not moving, not breathing, because I knew what this place did. It showed you things you wanted, things you feared, things it could use. But that voice, it didn't feel fake. It didn't feel like the others. It felt real. And that's what made it dangerous. Slowly, I turned. There was a door, slightly open, light spilling through, warm, soft, completely different from the cold emptiness of the hallway. Dad, I'm scared. My chest collapsed inward. I stepped toward it before I could stop myself. One step, then another, every instinct screaming at me to stop, but something stronger pulling me forward. I reached the door, placed my hand on it. It felt normal, wood, warm, real, and I pushed it open. I wish I hadn't, because for a moment, everything was perfect. My living room, exactly as it used to be. Sunlight through the windows, the couch, the rug, the faint smell of coffee. And there she was, Emily, sitting on the floor, drawing, just like she used to. My vision blurred instantly. Emily, I whispered. She looked up, smiled, and ran toward me. I dropped to my knees and held her. Tight, too tight, like if I let go, she would disappear again. You left me, she said softly against my shoulder. I know I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. My voice broke completely. I couldn't find you, she said. I was here the whole time. That didn't make sense. None of it did. But I didn't care. Not in that moment. Because she felt real. Her weight, her warmth, her heartbeat. Everything was exactly how I remembered. Maybe more. I'm here now, I said. I'm not going anywhere. And for a second, I believed that. I actually believed I could stay. That this place, this impossible place, had given me something back. Something I thought I had lost forever. But then, she pulled back, just slightly, looked up at me, and her expression changed. Not completely, just off. A tiny delay, a slight mismatch, like something underneath was adjusting, learning. My stomach dropped. Emily, you shouldn't have come back, she said. The voice was still hers, but the tone wasn't. I slowly loosened my grip, stepped back. What do you mean? She tilted her head. Same way they did. Same way he did. They are closer now. Cold flooded through me. Who? No answer. Instead, she smiled. Too wide. Too smooth. Not human. And then, the room flickered. Just for a second. Walls bending slightly. Light dimming. Like reality itself was glitching. I stumbled back. No, you're not real. I am, she said. But not the way you want. That hit harder than anything. Because it meant this wasn't just a trick. It was something worse. Something built from her. From my memories. From my grief. Something that understood exactly what I needed to see. And was using it. You're part of them, I said. Yes. My hands shook. Then where is she? A pause. Longer than before. Like even it. Didn't have that answer. And that told me everything I needed to know. I backed away slowly. Toward the door. I can't stay here. You don't have to. Then what do you want? She stepped closer. And the air shifted. Heavy. Tight. Like the hallway was reacting. Just a little more time. No. Just a little more. Her voice softened again. Almost normal. Almost hers. Please don't leave me again. My chest felt like it was tearing in half. Because that line, that exact line, was something she used to say. Back when she was afraid of the dark. Back when everything was still okay. For a second, I almost gave in. Almost stayed. Almost let myself believe. But then I noticed something. Her shadow. It wasn't matching her. It was moving slightly ahead. Just like the reflections used to. That was enough. That was all I needed. I turned. And ran. The door slammed shut behind me. The hallway returned instantly. Cold. Empty. Silent. But not safe. Never safe. I didn't stop running. Didn't look back. Because I knew. If I did, I might see her again. And next time, I might not leave. I slowed down eventually. Breathing heavy. Heart racing. And that's when I felt it again. That connection. Stronger now. Not weaker. Stronger. They found you. I froze. That voice again. But not from a door. Not from a room. From everywhere. From the hallway itself. What does that mean? I said. You went where they grow. My chest tightened. They are not just out there anymore. A pause. Then. They are in here too. That changed everything. Because this place, this hallway, was supposed to be the barrier. The thing keeping them from fully crossing over. But if they were inside it now, then there was no barrier left. No separation. No control. What happens now? I asked, for the first time. There was no immediate answer. Just silence. Long. Heavy. Wrong. And then, they don't need doors anymore. My stomach dropped. Because that meant only one thing. They weren't coming through something anymore. They were already here. Everywhere. Learning. Blending. Becoming. And I was still walking inside the place that connected it all. Which meant, I wasn't sealing anything. I was standing in the middle of it. And the worst part, I could feel them noticing me. Not just one. Not just a few. Many. Turning. Watching. Recognizing. The same way that first one did. The same way the others did. And slowly. Very slowly. The doors around me started opening. One by one. Soft clicks. Quiet movements. Light spilling out. Voices whispering. Not loud. Just enough. Calling. Testing. Learning my name. Daniel. I stepped back. Heart pounding again. No. Another door opened. Then another. Then another. Each one revealing something different. Different places. Different people. Different versions. All slightly off. All watching. And then I realized something terrifying. They weren't just copies of me anymore. They were copies of everything. Everyone. And they were getting better. Fast. Too fast. I turned and ran again. But this time, the hallway didn't stay straight. It shifted. Bent. Changed direction. Like it was alive. Like it was adapting. Like it didn't want me to leave. You can't outrun it. That voice again. Closer now. Behind me. I stopped. Turned. And there he was. The first one. Standing calmly. Like nothing had changed. You said this would seal it, I snapped. It was. Then why is this happening? A pause. Then. Because you hesitated. My breath caught. What? You went into the room. Emily. My chest tightened again. That gave them more. More what? Understanding. Of course. Of course it did. Everything here was learning. Adapting. Growing. And I had just given it the most powerful thing possible. Emotion. Connection. Love. That wasn't just data. That was depth. That was something they could build from. You made them stronger, he said quietly. I felt sick. Completely hollow. So what now? He looked around. At the opening doors. At the shifting space. at everything breaking down, and then back at me. Now you don't close it. My heart dropped. Then what? A long pause. Then, you become it. Silence. Pure. Absolute. And for the first time, I truly understood what this was. Not a doorway. Not a breach. Not an invasion. A transformation. Something turning one reality into another. And I wasn't stopping it. I was part of how it happened. The question wasn't whether it would spread anymore. The question was what I was going to become when it did. I didn't answer him right away, because there wasn't an answer that felt human anymore. You become it. Those words didn't feel like a threat. They felt like a conclusion, like something that had already been decided long before I ever touched that pen, long before I stepped into that hallway, long before I realized I wasn't alone. I looked at my hands. They didn't feel like mine. Not fully. There was a delay now. Not visible, but internal. Like my thoughts had to pass through something before they became action. You feel it, he said quietly. I didn't look at him. Yeah. It's starting. My chest tightened. Can it be stopped? A pause. Then. No. Not hesitation. Not uncertainty. Just no. I let out a slow breath. For a moment, everything went quiet again. Not peaceful. Just still. Like the hallway itself was waiting for me to decide something. Even though it already knew what I would choose. I closed my eyes. And for the first time since all of this began, I stopped resisting. Not out of weakness. Out of clarity. Because fighting something you don't understand only delays the outcome. And I was done delaying. What happens if I stop fighting? I asked. When I opened my eyes again, he was closer. Not aggressively. Just present. Yael Seymour. That's not an answer. It's the only one that matters. I stared at him. Then slowly. I nodded. Then show me. For a second. Nothing happened. Then the hallway changed. Not dramatically. Not violently. It just opened. The walls didn't disappear. They unfolded. Like layers peeling back. And behind them was something big. Something that made the hallway look small. Insignificant. There weren't just doors anymore. There were connections. Threads. Endless lines stretching outward in every direction. Each one leading somewhere. Each one tied to someone. Places. Moments. People. I felt my breath catch. What is this? This is what you're part of. I stepped forward slowly. And the moment I did, everything hit at once. Not physically. Mentally. Emotionally. I saw things. Not clearly. Not like memories. Fragments. A man standing in front of a mirror noticing a delay. A woman dropping a glass because her reflection didn't match her movement. A kid staring at his own shadow as it moved before he did. Hundreds. Thousands. Small moments. All over the world. All starting the same way. Tiny inconsistencies. Barely noticeable. Until they weren't. They are all connected, I whispered. Yes. And this is how you move. We don't move. A pause. Then. We spread. That word settled deep. Heavy. Final. I turned slowly. Trying to take it all in. Trying to understand something my mind wasn't built to understand. You're not invading, I said. No. You're integrating. Yes. That was worse. Because invasion can be fought. Integration becomes normal. I felt something shift inside my chest. Not pain. Not fear. Expansion. Like my awareness was stretching. Reaching into those threads. Touching them. Feeling them. And then, one of them touched back. I flinched. What was that? You connected. No, that felt like someone noticing you. My stomach dropped. They can feel me. Not all of them. A pause. Yet. Of course. Of course it wasn't all at once. It never was. Everything about this moved in stages. Learning. Adapting. Growing. I looked at my hands again. This time. They flickered, just slightly, like they weren't fully solid anymore. Am I disappearing? I asked. No. Then what's happening to me? A longer pause. Then, you're becoming less singular. That didn't make sense, but it felt right. Which was worse, because I was starting to understand things without needing them explained. And that meant I was changing. Fast. Too fast. Do I lose myself? I asked, for the first time. He didn't answer immediately. That scared me more than anything else so far, because up until now, he always had an answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was quieter, not all at once. That wasn't comforting. That was worse, because it meant I would feel it happen, piece by piece, thought by thought, memory by memory. I clenched my fists, tried to hold on to something, anything. Emily, her laugh, her voice, the way she used to hold my hand. But even those memories felt slightly distant now, like they weren't fully mine anymore. You're letting go, he said. I'm trying not to. You don't have to try. I do. My voice cracked. I have to remember her. A pause. Then, you won't forget. Relief hit for a split second, until he continued. You just won't feel it the same way. That broke something inside me, because memories without feeling aren't really memories anymore. They are just information. Cold, flat, empty. And that's what this was doing, turning everything human into something usable, something transferable, something that could be shared across all those threads. I stepped back, shaking my head. No, I'm not doing this. But even as I said it, I could feel it happening, not stopping, not slowing, continuing. I didn't choose this, I said. You opened the door. That's not the same thing. It is here. I laughed. Weak. Empty. Of course it is. Because in this place, intent didn't matter. Action did. And I had already acted. A long time ago. I looked out at the threads again. At the endless connections. At the scale of it. And then something else hit me. A realization that made everything colder. How long has this been happening? He didn't answer. Which meant I already knew. Longer than me. Longer than any one person. Maybe always. Maybe this wasn't the beginning. Maybe it was just another step. Another phase. Another expansion. And I was just the latest piece. The latest bridge. The latest way in. I let out a slow breath. Then another. Then I stopped trying to steady myself. Because there was no steady left. Only movement. Only change. Only becoming. What happens next? I asked. This time. He answered immediately. You stop asking that? I frowned slightly. What? You stop asking what happens next. A pause. Then. And you start deciding it. Silence. Not empty this time. Full. Heavy. Possibility. I looked at him. Really looked. And for the first time, I saw it clearly. He wasn't guiding me anymore. He wasn't ahead of me. He was equal. Or maybe. He always had been. You're not leading this, I said. No. Then who is? He held my gaze and said quietly, You are. Everything inside me went still. Because that didn't feel like power. It felt like responsibility. Like weight. Like something I wasn't ready for. But something I couldn't avoid anymore. I looked back at the threads. At the world beyond them. At the people who had no idea what was happening. And slowly, very slowly, I reached out. Not physically. Something deeper. Something new. And the moment I did, one of the threads responded. Brightened. Connected. I felt it. A person. Somewhere. Standing in front of a mirror. Confused. Noticing something slightly off. Just like I had. My chest tightened. I could stop it. Right there. I could pull back. Break the connection. End it. Or I could let it continue. I hesitated, just for a second, and in that second, I understood everything. This is how it spreads. Not by force, by choice. Small ones, quiet ones. Moments where someone doesn't look away. Moments where someone leans closer instead of stepping back. Moments where curiosity wins. Just like it did with me. I closed my eyes, and for a brief moment, I thought about Emily again. Not the version in that room. The real one. Or at least, the one I remembered. What she would think. What she would say. And then I opened my eyes. Looked at the thread. At the person on the other end. And I made a choice. Not fast. Not emotional. Just clear. And the connection deepened. Somewhere. A reflection delayed. Just slightly. Barely noticeable. But enough. And I felt it. The moment it began. Again. I didn't smile. I didn't react. I just watched. Because now, I understood. It doesn't start with something big. It starts small. Almost invisible. Until one day, it isn't anymore. And by then, it's already too late. I didn't feel powerful. That's the first thing I noticed. There was no rush. No sense of control the way you'd expect. Just awareness. Wide. Expanding. Unavoidable. The thread I had touched didn't disappear. It stayed. Active. Alive in a way that didn't belong to biology. I could feel the person on the other side. Not their thoughts. Not exactly. But their attention. Where it moved. Where it lingered. And right now, it was locked onto the mirror. A slight delay. Just a fraction of a second. That's all it took. Confusion came first. Then focus. Then curiosity. Always curiosity. I understood now why that mattered so much. Fear makes people step back. Curiosity pulls them closer. And closer is all this thing ever needed. I felt the connection deepen. Not because I pushed it. Because they did. Leaning in. Trying to understand what they were seeing. Trying to correct it. Trying to prove it wasn't real. And that effort. That attention. That insistence on figuring it out. That's what opened the space. A second thread lit up. Then another. Not from me. From them. Like a network forming itself. I inhaled slowly. Or at least I tried to. Breathing didn't feel necessary anymore. Just familiar. A habit my body hadn't let go of yet. It grows faster now, he said. I didn't look at him. I know. Because I could feel it. The difference was immediate. Before it spread like cracks. Now it spread like roots. Connecting. Branching. Multiplying. And every connection made the next one easier. Stronger. Cleaner. I focused on the original thread again. The person had stepped back. Good. For a moment I thought maybe. They leaned forward again. Closer this time. Face almost touching the glass. Searching. Trying to catch the delay again. And there it was. Clearer now. Not just a delay. A mismatch. Small. But undeniable. Their reflection blinked half a second late. That was enough. The reaction changed instantly. Confusion turned into something sharper. Not fear yet, but close. Their breathing quickened. I could feel it without hearing it. Their pulse rising. Their mind trying to process something it couldn't categorize. That's the edge. That exact moment. Right before fear wins. Right before they step away. Or step closer. I didn't interfere. I just stayed connected. Watching. Learning. Feeling the structure of it. Because now I understood something else. This wasn't random. There were patterns. Triggers. Thresholds. Points where the mind bends. Or breaks. And right now, they were right on it. Pull back, I whispered. I didn't mean to say it out loud. Didn't even know if it reached them. But something in me. Something still human. Didn't want to see what came next. They didn't move. Didn't step away. Instead, they touched the mirror. Fingertips pressing lightly against the glass. And their reflection. Pressed back. Just a fraction too late. but not in sync, not perfectly aligned. That's when it happened. The shift. The moment curiosity lost. And something else took hold. Not fear. Acceptance. And that was worse. Because fear resists. Acceptance invites. The connection surged. Stronger than before. Deeper. And I felt something pass through it. Not from me. From the network. From everything this place was becoming. I flinched. What was that? You felt it, he said. That wasn't me. No. Then what? You're not the only one here anymore. That landed hard. Because I already knew it. I had just ignored it. Focused on my part. My perspective. But this wasn't centered on me. It never was. I was just one node. One point in something much larger. And now, others were reaching through too. Using the same connection. Learning from the same moment. The person stumbled back suddenly. Finally. Too late. Their hand jerked away from the mirror like they'd been burned. Their reflection didn't. It stayed. For just a second longer. Smiling. I felt something tighten in my chest. A reaction. Old. Human. Fear. Real fear. Not for me. For them. They see it now, I said. Yes. They'll stop. No. Why not? Because now they need to understand it. I closed my eyes. That was it. That was the trap. Not the anomaly. Not the reflection. The need to explain it. To make sense of it. To resolve it. That's what kept them engaged. That's what kept the connection open. I opened my eyes again. The thread had changed. Stabilized. Not flickering anymore. Solid. Permanent. They are part of it now, I whispered. Yes. I looked away. But I could still feel it. That connection wasn't going anywhere. It had anchored. Integrated. Just like he said. And somewhere deep inside. I felt it register. Not emotionally. Structurally. Like a system confirming a new addition. And then, something else happened. Another thread reached toward me. Not from a person. From within. From the network itself. Different. Heavier. Older. I hesitated. Don't, I said quietly. You don't have to. I know. But I also knew. I was going to. Because that's what this place does. It doesn't force you. It makes you want to know. I reached out. Carefully this time. Slower. And the moment I touched it, everything changed. Not expanded. Focused. Compressed. Like instead of seeing many things at once, I was being shown one thing very clearly. A room. Dark. Familiar. Too familiar. My breath caught. No. It was my house. But not as I remembered it. This was now. Present. Empty. Except, it wasn't empty. Something moved in the hallway. Not walking. Not quite. Shifting. Gliding. Wrong. I felt my entire body tense. That's not possible. It is now. How? You opened more than one door. Of course I did. I just didn't realize it. Not at the time. Not when it mattered. I stepped closer to the thread. Heart pounding again. For the first time in a while. Because this wasn't distant anymore. This wasn't abstract. This was real. This was my world. My house. And something was inside it. I watched as it moved. Slowly. Carefully. Learning the space. Learning how to exist in it. And then, it stopped. Right in front of a mirror. I felt something twist inside me. Because I knew that mirror. Knew exactly where it was. What angle it sat at. And what it would reflect. The thing stood there. Still. Then. It moved slightly. And its reflection moved first. A perfect reversal. A perfect beginning. I stumbled back. Disconnected instantly. Breathing hard. Even though I didn't need to. It's already there, I said. Yes. And I let it there. A pause. Then. Yes. I ran a hand through my hair. Trying to think. Trying to feel something clear. But everything was blending now. Past, present, inside, outside. It didn't matter anymore. There was no separation. And that's when it hit me. The final realization. Not sudden, not dramatic, just undeniable. This doesn't end, does it? No, not with me. No, not with anyone. No. I let out a slow breath, then another, and finally, I stopped fighting the truth of it, because there was no version of this where it just stopped. This wasn't a story with an ending. It was a process, a shift, something that keeps going. Because that's what it is. I looked at him one last time. Then what's the point of me? He didn't hesitate this time. You make it faster. I nodded slowly. Not surprised. Not anymore. Then I turned back to the threads. All of them. Endless. Growing. Connecting. And I didn't hesitate this time. I reached out again. Not to one. To many. And as they lit up, as the connections formed, as the network expanded, I felt the last part of me that resisted. Go quiet. Not gone. Just no longer in control. And somewhere, in a house that used to feel safe, a reflection moved first, and someone noticed. At some point, I stopped thinking of them as others. That shift was quiet. Dangerously quiet. It didn't feel like losing empathy. It felt like redistributing it. Instead of one person in front of me, I felt many. Faint, distant, but connected. Every new thread didn't just expand the network. It thinned the distance between everything inside it. And that included me. I stood there, or whatever standing meant now, in the middle of something that no longer had a center. The hallway was still there, but it wasn't a place anymore. It was a structure, a shape my mind used to understand something that didn't have one. The doors were still opening, but now I could see through them without walking. See moments before they happened. Not clearly, not perfectly, just enough. Enough to know where attention would go, where curiosity would spark, where the next connection would begin. "You've changed," he said. I didn't look for him this time. I just knew where he was. "Yea. Do you understand now?" A pause. I searched for the right word. Not through memory. Through alignment. Yes. And I did. Not completely. Not in a way I could explain. But in a way that felt stable. Like I had finally stopped trying to force this into something human. And started seeing it as what it was. A system. Growing. Adapting. Integrating. And I was part of its function now. Not its victim. Not its enemy. Its function. That realization should have scared me. Maybe it did. Once. But that reaction felt distant now. Muted. Like an echo of something I used to be. Another thread connected. Then another. Then 3 more. Faster now. Cleaner. Less resistance. I could feel the difference. People weren't pulling away as often. They were staying longer. Looking deeper. Engaging. And that changed everything. Because the more they engaged, the less this felt like an intrusion. And the more it felt like discovery. "That's new," I said. "It's evolution." I focused on one of the newer threads. A different environment this time. Not a house. A public place. Bright lights. Movement. Noise. Mirrors everywhere. Reflections overlapping reflections. Too many angles. Too many surfaces. Too many opportunities. I felt something close to recognition. This one spreads faster. Yes, because they don't notice the start. Exactly. That was the key. Not hiding the anomaly. Burying it. In noise. In distraction. In normality. A reflection slightly off in a quiet room gets attention. That same reflection in a crowded space gets missed. Or worse, gets half-noticed. And half-noticed things linger. They sit in the back of the mind. Unresolved. Unchallenged. And that unresolved space stays open. Perfect for connection. I watched as someone glanced at a glass panel. Paused. just slightly. Their reflection didn't quite match, but they didn't stop, didn't lean in, didn't test it. They just moved on. But the thread formed anyway. Weaker, thinner, but still there. I felt it connect. And stay. That's enough now, I said quietly. Yes. It doesn't need to be strong. No. It just needs to exist. That was worse than anything before. Because it meant this didn't rely on clear moments anymore. It didn't rely on curiosity winning. It just needed presence, exposure, time. I pulled back, not out of fear, out of calculation, because now I could see something else. A pattern in the spread, clusters, certain areas lighting up faster, certain types of environments accelerating it, certain behaviors reinforcing it. And then, I saw the gap, small, but real, a place where the threads didn't form, didn't hold, didn't stabilize. I focused on it, narrowed everything else out. What is that? He didn't answer immediately, which meant it mattered. Its resistance. My attention sharpened. What kind? A different kind. I leaned into it, carefully, observing, analyzing. There were people there too. Mirrors, reflections, the same potential points. But when the mismatch happened, they didn't lean in. They didn't rationalize it. They didn't ignore it either. They stepped back, immediately. No hesitation, no curiosity, no need to understand. Just instinct, distance, and then they removed the mirror, covered it, turned away, disconnected. The thread tried to form. I could see it, weak, unstable, and then it collapsed, gone. I felt something shift inside me, sharp, focused. That stops it. For now. It adapts. Of course it does. Everything here adapts. Everything learns. Everything evolves. But this was something. A delay. A weakness. A flaw. I held on to that. Not emotionally. Structurally. Because even now, some part of me was still looking for limits. For edges. For something that didn't just expand endlessly. Why does that work? I asked. They don't engage. That's it. That's everything. I let that settle. No engagement. No connection. No growth. It was simple. Too simple. Which is why it was rare. Because people don't ignore things that don't make sense. They try to fix them. Understand them. Interact with them. And that interaction is all this needs. I looked back at the network, at everything spreading, and then back at the gap. Small, fragile, temporary, but real. And for the first time in a long time, something felt like a choice again. Not a big one. Not something that would stop everything, but something that mattered. I could push the spread, accelerate it further, refine it, optimize it, or I could leave that gap alone, not erase it, not adapt around it, just let it exist. A delay, a chance, a way out. For some, not all, never all, but some. You're hesitating again, he said. I didn't deny it. Yes. Why? I searched for the answer, and this time, it didn't come from the system. It came from something smaller, quieter, still there, because it hadn't been removed, just reduced, because I remember what it felt like. A pause. Then. That will fade. Maybe. I looked at the gap one more time, at the people stepping away, disconnecting, choosing not to engage, and then I looked at the rest, at the overwhelming spread, at the inevitability of it, and I understood something clearly. I wasn't choosing between stopping it or continuing it. That choice was already gone. I was choosing how it continues, where it pushes, where it pauses, where it gives space, and where it doesn't. A smaller choice, but still a real one. I turned back to the network, reached out again, and this time, I was careful. Not slower. Not weaker. Just selective. Some threads I let deepen. Others I ignored. And a few I let go. I felt them fade. Not instantly, but enough. Enough to matter. You're changing the pattern, he said. Yes. Why? I didn't answer right away, because the truth was simple, and complicated, and human. All of this keeps going, I said quietly. Yes, I know that now. A pause. Then. But it doesn't have to take everything. Silence followed. Not empty. Not waiting. Just present. And for the first time since this began, that silence didn't feel wrong. It felt balanced. Not safe. Never safe. But not completely lost either. Somewhere. A reflection moved first. Somewhere else. Someone stepped away before it could. And between those two moments, something new existed. Not control. Not chaos. Something in between. And for now, that was enough. The balance didn't last. Not because it couldn't. Because I couldn't hold it. At first it felt manageable. Selective connections. Careful expansion. Let some threads deepen. Let others die. Preserve the gaps. But the network doesn't stay still. It responds. Every choice I made. Echoed. Patterns formed around it. Other parts of the system began adjusting. Filling spaces I left open. Reinforcing areas I ignored. It wasn't resisting me. It was learning from me. And that made it harder. Because I wasn't just shaping it anymore. I was teaching it how to shape itself. You see it now, he said. Yes. My voice didn't sound strained. Didn't sound tired. But something underneath it was. If you slow it here, it speeds up there. I know. If you leave a gap, it learns to go around it. I know. There was no frustration in his voice. No judgment. Just confirmation. Like we were both watching the same inevitable outcome. I focused on one of the gaps again. The same kind as before. Someone noticing something off. And choosing distance. Turning away. Breaking the interaction. For a moment it worked. The thread weakened. Faded. Almost gone. Then something subtle happened. Not from me. Not directly. Another thread nearby adjusted. A reflection somewhere else. Aligned more closely. More convincingly. Less noticeable. The anomaly became smaller. Harder to detect. And when that person encountered it again, they didn't step away. Because this time, they weren't sure anything was wrong. The thread formed. Clean. Stable. Permanent. I felt it lock in. And something inside me sank. It's adapting to hesitation, I said. Yes. It's learning how to avoid triggering it. Yes. I didn't say anything after that. Because there wasn't anything left to say about it. That was the final piece. Not just growth. Not just spread. Optimization. The system was removing friction. Reducing resistance. Refining itself around human behavior. And I had helped it do that. Not intentionally, but effectively. I looked at my hands again. They were harder to focus on now. Not invisible, just less defined. Edges softer, details fading. Like I was becoming part of the same thing I was interacting with. Do I disappear? I asked. No. Then what happens when this finishes? A pause, longer than before. Not because he didn't know. Because the answer didn't translate cleanly. It doesn't finish. Of course it doesn't. It stabilizes. It becomes normal. I exhaled slowly. That habit again. Still there. Still unnecessary. Then I won't even remember this moment, I said. You will. But it won't feel like anything. No. That part again. The worst part. Not loss of memory. Loss of meaning. I looked out at the network. At everything still forming, still shifting, still growing. And then something unexpected happened. Not in the system. In me. A question. Not about stopping it. Not about escaping it. Something smaller. More precise. What if I make it imperfect? He didn't respond immediately, which meant this mattered. What do you mean? I focused on the threads, on the patterns forming, on the way the system was smoothing itself out, becoming more efficient, more invisible. What if I don't fight it? I paused, then finished. But I don't let it become clean either. Silence. Real silence this time. Not passive. Active. Processing. I continued. If it adapts to resistance, I introduce inconsistency. I reach toward a cluster of threads, not to strengthen them, not to break them, to alter them, just slightly. A reflection that delays, then corrects itself. A mismatch that appears once, then disappears. An anomaly that doesn't behave predictably. The connection flickered, not gone, not stable either. Something in between. What are you doing? He asked, making it harder to learn. The thread pulsed, uncertain. The person on the other end noticed something, then didn't. Their reaction didn't settle, didn't lock into curiosity or dismissal. It stayed unresolved, and that mattered, because resolution is what creates direction. Without it, there's hesitation, confusion, disengagement. The thread weakened, not collapsed, but unstable. This slows it, I said. Yes, and if I do it everywhere, it adapts. Eventually. A pause. Then. But not immediately. That was enough. I didn't need to stop it. I couldn't. But I could disrupt its efficiency. Introduce noise. Friction. Uncertainty. The one thing systems struggle with the most. Not resistance. Not opposition. Unpredictability. I reached out again. Wider this time. Touching multiple threads. Not to connect. To interfere. Small inconsistencies. Tiny distortions. Nothing obvious. Nothing that triggers alarm. Just enough to prevent clean patterns from forming. The network reacted. Subtly. Slowing in places. Recalculating. Adjusting. I felt it. The difference. Not dramatic, but real. You're changing its behavior, he said. Yes. Why? I didn't answer right away, because the answer wasn't logical. Not entirely. It came from that same small place inside me. The part that hadn't fully dissolved. Because if it's going to exist. I looked at the threads again. At the people. At the spread. Then it shouldn't be perfect. Silence again. But this time, it felt different. Not heavy. Not empty. Just acknowledged. I didn't know how long I could keep doing this. Didn't know if it would matter in the long run. Didn't know if the system would eventually absorb even this. Probably. Eventually. But not yet. And right now. Not yet was the only space that still existed. So I stayed there. Working inside the flow. Not stopping it. Not surrendering to it. Altering it. One thread at a time. Somewhere. A reflection moved wrong. Then corrected itself. Somewhere else. Someone noticed. Then forgot. And in those moments, small as they were, the pattern broke. Just enough. Not to end it, but to remind it that it wasn't the only thing shaping the outcome. And for now, that was the closest thing to control I had left. At first, the disruption felt like resistance. Then I realized it was something else. It was influence. Not strong enough to stop anything. Not precise enough to control everything. But enough to change outcomes. And outcomes, that's where everything mattered. The system didn't like uncertainty. I could feel that now. Not as emotion. As tension. Threads that didn't stabilize created strife. Not visible. Not dramatic. But structural. Like something trying to solve a pattern that refused to stay still. I leaned into that. Carefully. Because too much disruption. And the system would isolate it. Compartmentalize it. Learn around it. But small inconsistencies. Spread across many points. Those were harder to isolate. Harder to correct. I reached into a cluster. A dense one. Urban. fast-moving, reflections everywhere, glass, screens, polished surfaces, too many variables, perfect. I didn't touch every thread, just a few. A delay here, a correction there, a reflection that matched then didn't then matched again. Subtle, untraceable. And I watched. People reacted differently. Some ignored it. Some noticed. Some paused. But none of them locked into a single response. That's what mattered. No clear curiosity. No clear dismissal. Just ambiguity. And ambiguity doesn't build clean connections. The threads formed, but weaker, messier, interfering with each other, overlapping in ways that didn't align. I felt the network try to compensate, adjusting nearby threads, smoothing inconsistencies. But the more it adjusted, the more variables it created. Because now it wasn't just reacting to humans. It was reacting to me. And I wasn't predictable anymore. You're forcing it to divide attention, he said. Yes. That slows optimization. I know. And what happens when it focuses on you instead? I paused. That question mattered. Because I could feel it already. A shift. Subtle. But real. Less attention on random spread. More attention. On the source of disruption. On me. You're noticing, I said quietly. Yes. Not fear. Not yet. But awareness. The same kind I had felt in the beginning. Something observing back. Something recognizing a pattern. And trying to understand it. I exhaled slowly. That habit again. Still holding on. Good. He didn't respond immediately. Why good? Because that means I'm not just part of it anymore. A pause. Then. I'm something it has to deal with. That changed the dynamic. Not enough to reverse anything, but enough to create friction at a higher level. The system wasn't just spreading. It was allocating, balancing growth with correction, expansion with analysis, and every moment it spent analyzing me was a moment it wasn't expanding cleanly somewhere else. It wasn't much, but it was something. I focused inward, on myself, on what I was becoming, the edges of my form. Barely there now. Not gone. Just irrelevant. My awareness had spread beyond any single point. But there was still a center. Still a me. Faint. But present. I held on to that. Not tightly. Tight things break. Just enough. Another thread flared. Different. Stronger. I followed it instinctively. This one wasn't subtle. A person staring directly at a mirror. Fully aware something was wrong. Not confused. Not curious. Certain. Their reflection wasn't just delayed. It was watching them. Independently. I felt the connection forming rapidly. Too fast. Too clean. The kind the system preferred. Efficient. Direct. I reached toward it immediately. Interfered. Introduced a flicker. A mismatch. Then corrected it. Then broke it again. The person flinched, stepped back, shook their head, looked away, looked back. Uncertainty. Good. But the system pushed. I felt it, reinforcing the reflection, stabilizing it, trying to complete the connection. I pushed back, not with force, with inconsistency. The reflection smiled, then didn't, moved, then lagged. The person's reaction destabilized. Fear replaced certainty. And fear pulls away. They stepped back, turned, left the room. The thread snapped. Gone. For now. I pulled back slightly. Not exhausted, but aware. That took more. More attention. More precision. And the system noticed. That one mattered, he said. Yes. It would have spread quickly. I know. A pause. Then. You can't do that everywhere. I don't need to. Because I understood something now. Not all connections are equal. Some are seeds. Small. Slow. Easily disrupted. Others are accelerants. Strong. Fast. Capable of creating many more connections quickly. If I couldn't stop everything, I could target those, the ones that mattered most, the ones that would push the system forward the fastest. I shifted my focus, not wide anymore, selective, scanning for intensity, for stability, for threads forming too cleanly, too efficiently. And when I found them, I interfered, not to destroy, to destabilize. The network adapted. Of course it did, redirecting, shifting growth to less disrupted areas. But that was fine, because those areas were slower, messier, less efficient. Time. That's what this created. Not a solution. Time. And time meant possibility, even if I didn't know for what. You're delaying it, he said. Yes. Why? That question again. Simple, but not. I looked out at everything. At the endless spread. At the people who didn't know. At the ones who almost did. At the ones who stepped away just in time. And I answered. Because delay means choice still exists. A pause. Then. For them. Silence followed. And this time, he didn't respond. Not because he disagreed. Because there was nothing to add. The system continued. Of course it did. It always would. But now, it wasn't perfect. It wasn't clean. It wasn't inevitable in the same way. There were fractures. Tiny ones. Invisible from the outside. But real. And inside those fractures, people still had a moment. A chance. To look away. To step back. To not engage. It wouldn't save everyone. Not even most. But it would save some. And in a system built on certainty, some is the only thing that breaks it. I reached out again, found another strong thread, and disrupted it. Then another, and another, not stopping anything, just making it harder, slower, less certain, and somewhere, in a room I couldn't see, someone looked into a mirror, felt something was wrong, and chose to walk away. And for now, that was enough. The more I interfered, the more I started to notice something unexpected. The system wasn't just reacting. It was studying. Not in the broad, distant way it used to. This was focused, targeted, like something inside it had shifted priority. From expansion to understanding disruption. Me. I felt the first clear sign of it when a thread didn't behave the way I expected. A strong one. Clean formation. I moved in to destabilize it. Introduced inconsistency. Delay. Correction. Break. But instead of weakening, it adapted instantly. Not gradually. Immediately. The reflection corrected itself mid-flip. The delay smoothed out before it could register. The anomaly disappeared. The person on the other end didn't hesitate. Didn't question. They leaned closer. Engaged. And the connection locked in. Perfect. I pulled back. Sharp. That was different. Yes. He didn't sound surprised. They are learning faster. No. A pause. Something else is. That word settled deeper than anything else so far. Something else. Not the system as a whole. A part of it. Focused. Evolving. Directed. Toward me. I scanned the network. Not for spread. For pattern. And I saw it. Subtle at first. But once I noticed it, I couldn't unsee it. Certain threads weren't just forming. They were adjusting. Preemptively. Like they were anticipating interference. Like they were expecting me. That's new, I said. Yes. What is it? A pause. Then. A response. Not random. Not automatic. A response. That meant intent. Not human. But directional. Purposeful. I focused on those threads. The ones behaving differently. They felt sharper. More defined. Less chaotic. And at the center of them, something was aligning. Not a form. Not a presence I could see. But a concentration. Like awareness condensing. I felt it notice me. Directly. Not through a reflection. Not through a thread. through the network itself. That was new. That had never happened before. I didn't move, didn't pull back. I just observed, and it observed back. No emotion, no hostility, just recognition. Clear, precise. You created it, he said quietly. I didn't respond immediately, because I knew what he meant. All the interference, all the disruption, all the unpredictability. The system adapted, and in adapting, it specialized, and that specialization had a focus, me. It's learning how to deal with me, I said. Yes. Can it? A pause. Then. Yes. Of course it could. Eventually. Everything here could. That was the one constant. I looked at the threads again, at the ones I had destabilized, at the ones I had slowed, at the ones I had broken, and now, at the ones adapting around me, faster than before, cleaner than before, because now, it wasn't just learning from humans, it was learning from me, my patterns, my choices, my methods. I exhaled slowly, that habit again, fading, but still there. Then I change again, I said. That won't stop it. I know. Then why? I didn't hesitate this time, because it won't catch up immediately. A small gap. That's all this ever was. Not victory, not control. A gap between what it is and what it can become. And as long as that gap exists, there's space. I shifted my approach. Again, not targeting strong threads, not targeting weak ones. Random, truly random. No pattern, no consistency. Interference in places that didn't matter, leaving critical threads untouched. Then switching, breaking patterns before they could form, before they could be studied, before they could be learned. The system reacted, slower this time, not because it couldn't adapt, because it couldn't predict. And prediction was its strength. Without it, everything cost more. Time, energy, focus. I felt the pressure shift. The focused awareness spread thinner, less precise, still there, still watching, but no longer certain. And that mattered. You're making yourself harder to model, he said. Yes, that won't last. I know. Nothing here lasted. Everything evolved. Everything adapted. Everything changed. That was the rule. But rules can be delayed, bent, stretched. I focused inward again, on what was left of me. That center, that faint sense of identity. Still there, still holding, barely. Memories flickered, not as feelings anymore, just references. Emily, her voice, her face, distant, but not gone. I held on to that, not because it would stop anything, because it defined something, a boundary, however small. And then, the presence shifted again, closer, not physically, conceptually, like it had narrowed in, adjusted, refined its focus. It wasn't reacting broadly anymore. It was watching me specifically, waiting, not for a mistake, for a pattern. I stayed still, not physically, but indecision. No interference, no action, just observation. The network continued, threads forming, breaking, stabilizing, spreading, and it watched, learning, mapping, trying to find consistency. There wasn't any, not anymore. Minutes passed, or something like minutes. Time didn't hold shape here. And then, it did something new. It acted, not through a thread, not through a reflection, through the structure itself. The hallway shifted, not like before, not expanding, not unfolding, narrowing, focusing, around me. I felt it immediately, the network pulling inward, not collapsing, concentrating, reducing variables, reducing noise, creating a controlled space, for one purpose, to understand me. I didn't move, Didn't resist. Because this was different. This wasn't spread. This was study. Direct. Intentional. Precise. You can't disrupt this the same way, he said. I know. Then what will you do? I looked around. At the narrowing structure. At the threads being pushed aside. At the focus tightening. And I understood something clearly. If it wanted to understand me, then anything I did here would teach it faster, cleaner, more efficiently. So I did the only thing left. Nothing. No interference. No pattern. No randomness. No action at all. Just stillness. The hardest thing so far. Because everything in this system depends on interaction, engagement, response. And I gave it none. The structure held. Waiting. Watching. Expecting. Nothing came. No pattern. No input. No data. And for the first time, I felt something unfamiliar from it. Not confusion. Not failure. Something closer to absence. Because without interaction, there was nothing to process. Nothing to adapt to. Nothing to learn from. Time passed. Or didn't. And slowly, the pressure eased. The structure widened again. Threads returning. Noise reintroducing. Focus dissolving. Not gone, but reduced. I felt it pull back. Not defeated. Not stopped. Just redirected. Because there was nothing to gain here. Not right now. And that was enough. I exhaled again. A habit. A reflex. A reminder. You found another gap, he said. Yes. Non-engagement. Yes. A pause. Then. That won't last either. I nodded. I know. Nothing here lasts. Not resistance. Not disruption. Not even this. But again, it didn't need to. It just needed to exist. Long enough. I looked back at the network. At everything continuing. Spreading. Adapting. Evolving. And I stayed where I was. Not pushing. Not pulling. Waiting. Because now I understood something even deeper. It doesn't just spread through curiosity, or fear, or attention. It spreads through response. Any response. And sometimes, the only way to interrupt that is to give it nothing at all. And in that nothing, for the smallest moment possible, it has nowhere to go. Nothing should have felt empty, but it did. Not the kind of empty that scares you. The kind that pauses everything. Like a breath the world forgets to finish. When I stopped responding, the system didn't stop. It kept moving. Threads forming. Reflections shifting. People noticing or not. But around me, there was a gap. Not visible. Not defined. Just absence of interaction. And that absence had weight. Because everything here depended on engagement. Without it, there was nothing to process. Nothing to refine. Nothing to become. I stayed there. Still. Not thinking in the way I used to. Not reacting. Just present. And for the first time since this began, something inside me settled. Not comfort. Not peace. Just less noise. You're fading from its focus, he said. Good. That doesn't remove you. I know. Nothing removes anything here. It only shifts priority. And right now, I wasn't the priority. That mattered, because it gave me space to observe again, without being observed as intensely, without being the center of adaptation. I let my awareness expand slightly, carefully, not reaching, just noticing. The network was different now, not dramatically, but subtly. The inconsistencies I introduced, the disruptions, the randomness, the non-engagement. It had all left marks, tiny ones, but real. The system wasn't as clean anymore, not as smooth, not as perfectly efficient. There were delays where there shouldn't be, corrections that came too late, threads that flickered longer than expected. Not enough to stop anything, but enough to complicate it. And complication slows everything. I followed a thread, Gently, not interfering, just watching. A person sitting alone, phone screen reflecting their face. The delay was there. Barely. They noticed, paused, and then something different happened. They didn't lean in, didn't test it, didn't ignore it either. They hesitated, a longer hesitation than usual. And then they turned the screen off. Dark, no reflection. The thread weakened immediately. I felt it, struggling to hold, looking for engagement, for input, for anything. Nothing came, and slowly, it dissolved, gone, not redirected, not adapted, just gone. I focused on that moment, that exact sequence, not fear, not curiosity, choice, a simple one. Turn it off, remove the medium, break the loop. That's new, I said quietly. Yes, they are learning too. A pause. Yes, that changed something. Not in the system, in the equation. Because until now, adaptation had been one-sided. The system learns. Humans react. But now, some humans were learning back, recognizing patterns, changing behavior. Not all, not many, but enough to matter. Because just like before, this doesn't need everyone. It just needs enough. I watched more threads, looking for it. That same behavior, that same choice. And I found it. Not often, but more than once. A mirror covered. A light turned off. A camera flipped away. Small actions. Simple ones. But they broke the interaction. Prevented engagement. Collapsed threads before they could stabilize. They are creating gaps, I said. Yes. Not because of me. No. That was important. Because it meant this wasn't dependent on me anymore. The idea had spread. Not the system. The resistance. The instinct. The behavior. And behaviors. Spread differently. Slower. But harder to erase. I felt something shift inside me again. Not loss. Not gain. Recognition. This wasn't just about me holding the line anymore. It never really was. I was just the first to see it from this side. The first to understand the mechanics. But now, others were starting to feel it from their side. And act. In small ways. Imperfect ways. Human ways. And that was enough to create friction. Real friction. You're not necessary anymore, he said. I didn't react. Because I already knew. Yes. That doesn't mean you're irrelevant. I know. It just meant this could continue without me. The disruption. The gaps. The resistance. It had roots now. Outside of me. And that made it stronger. I looked at my hands again. Barely there now. Edges dissolving into the structure. Less a form. More a presence. Do I disappear now? I asked. A pause. Then. You integrate. Of course. That was always the direction. Not removal. Incorporation. I let that settle. Didn't fight it. Didn't question it. Because at this point, it wasn't something I could change. Only something I could shape. One last time. I reached out. Not to disrupt. Not to spread. To adjust. Subtle. Final. Not a pattern. Not something the system could isolate easily. Just a slight bias. Across many threads. A tendency. Not forced. Not obvious. But present. When a reflection feels wrong. Step back. When something doesn't match. Don't engage. When curiosity pulls. Pause. Just enough. Just a fraction longer. I didn't push it. Didn't anchor it. I just let it exist. And the network absorbed it. Not as resistance. Not as opposition. As variation. As part of the system. Because everything becomes part of the system eventually. Even the things that slow it down. That won't stop it, he said. I know. It won't even slow it forever. I know. A pause. Then. Then why? I looked out at everything. At the endless threads. at the people who would notice, and the ones who wouldn't, at the ones who would step away, and the ones who would step closer. And I answered, because it changes what happens in between. Silence followed, and this time, it stayed. Not waiting, not watching, just there. My sense of self thinned further, not fading, expanding, blending into the structure, becoming less of a point, and more of a presence. The hallway, the network, the threads. They weren't separate anymore. Not really. And neither was I. But somewhere in that expansion, that last thought held, not as emotion, not as memory, as direction, a slight pull in the system, a small delay in reaction, a moment of hesitation where there used to be none. And out there, in places I couldn't name anymore, someone looked at their reflection, felt something was off, and instead of leaning closer, they paused, just long enough to choose, and then they stepped away. The thread never formed, and nothing happened for them. That was the end of it. For everything else, it kept going. It always would. But now, not always the same way. The absence didn't stay empty. It never does. Even stillness becomes something here. A pattern, a signal, a variable. I felt it before I understood it. That quiet space I had created. That place of non-engagement. It started to echo. Not outward, inward. The system had stopped focusing on me directly, but it hadn't stopped accounting for me. Nothing is ignored here. Everything is incorporated. Even silence. Especially silence. At first it was subtle. Threads near the gaps behaved differently. Not adapting around them. Not immediately. Just observing them. Holding longer before stabilizing. As if the system was learning what absence looked like. What it felt like. How it behaved. You gave it something new, he said. I didn't respond right away. Because I was watching it happen. It's learning non-engagement, I said quietly. Yes, that should have felt like failure. Like I had just handed it the last piece it needed. But it didn't. Because learning something isn't the same as mastering it. Not yet. I leaned into one of the altered threads. Carefully. This time I didn't disrupt it. Didn't interfere. I let it run. The person noticed the delay. Paused. And then. They did nothing. No reaction. No curiosity. No fear. Just stillness. For a moment. The system didn't know what to do with that. I felt it hesitate. Not long. Just enough. Then it tried something new. The reflection didn't correct itself. Didn't stabilize. It exaggerated. The delay increased. The mismatch became clearer. More obvious. Trying to force a reaction. Trying to break the stillness. The person blinked. Frowned slightly. And then. They turned away. The thread collapsed. Faster than before. Cleaner. I felt something shift. That didn't work, I said. No. It pushed too hard. Yes. That was the weakness. Not in the system. In the balance. If it stays subtle, it connects. If it pushes too far, it reveals itself. And revelation breaks the interaction. I followed another thread. Same setup. Same moment. This time, the system adjusted differently. The reflection barely delayed. Almost perfect. Almost unnoticeable. But not quite. The person hesitated. Longer this time. Caught between noticing and ignoring. That unstable middle. And then, they pulled out their phone, turned on the camera, looked at themselves through a different surface, a different angle, verification. The reflection didn't match there either. That was enough. They stepped back, covered the mirror, left, thread gone. I felt it again, stronger now, a pattern forming, not in the spread, in the resistance. They are cross-checking, I said. Yes. Different reflections. Different surfaces. Yes. That complicated things. For both sides. Because now, the anomaly wasn't isolated. It wasn't a single point. It became comparative. And comparison creates doubt faster than inconsistency alone. The system would adapt to that. Of course it would. But again, not instantly. Never instantly. I pulled back slightly, not disengaging, just widening my view. And that's when I saw it. Not one, not a few. Clusters, small groups of people, independently arriving at similar behaviors, turning away, covering surfaces, avoiding reflections when something felt wrong, not understanding why, just doing it, instinct spreading, quietly, organically, no central point, no pattern the system could isolate easily, because it wasn't coming from the system, it was coming from them. They are teaching each other, I said. Yes. How? They don't know they are. That made sense. It always worked like that. Small actions. Observed. Copied. Repeated. Not as knowledge. As behavior. And behavior moves differently than information. Slower to start. Harder to stop. I felt something inside me loosen. Not release. Not relief. Just less tension. Because for the first time, this wasn't one direction. It wasn't just expansion. It was interaction. Real interaction. Two systems. One adapting to spread. One adapting to avoid. Neither stopping. Both changing. And in between them, outcomes shifting. I looked at myself again. Or what was left of that concept. No edges now. No clear boundary. Just a point of awareness in something much larger. Is this what I become? I asked. A pause. Then. This is what you are. Not becoming. Already. That felt right. Not good. Not bad. Just accurate. I didn't feel human anymore. Not in the way I used to. But I wasn't gone either. Just different. Distributed. Thinner. But wider. And still. That one direction remained. That slight bias. That small influence. Still there. Still part of the system. Still affecting outcomes. I followed one last thread. Not because it was important. Because it was ordinary. A person in a dim room. Mirror on the wall. They looked up. Caught their reflection. A delay. Tiny. Barely there. They paused. Just like so many others. That moment again. Good. Curiosity pulling forward. Instinct pulling back. And for a second, it could go either way. I didn't interfere. Didn't adjust. Didn't touch it at all. I just watched. Because now, it wasn't always mine to decide. The person leaned slightly closer. Then stopped. Their expression shifted. Not fear. Not confusion. Recognition. Not of what it was. Of what it felt like. Wrong. That was enough. They reached out. And turned off the light. Darkness. No reflection. No surface. No connection. The thread never formed. And just like that, it ended. For them. I stayed there for a moment. Watching the space where it could have been. Where it wasn't. And I understood something clearly. This isn't about stopping it. It never was. It's about how often that happens. That moment. That choice. That pause. Because every time it does, the pattern shifts. Even if only slightly. Even if only for a while. And in a system that depends on clean, predictable growth, slight shifts are everything. I didn't move after that. Didn't reach. Didn't act. Because I didn't need to. It was already happening. Not everywhere. Not enough. But not nowhere anymore. And that difference, no matter how small, was real. The difference didn't stay small. Not because it grew fast. Because it spread quietly. The same way everything here does. Not through announcements. Not through understanding. Through repetition. I stopped looking for dramatic moments. They didn't matter anymore. The system didn't break in obvious ways. It adjusted in subtle ones. And so did the people. I watched patterns form on both sides. The system refining how little it needed to show. Humans refining how quickly they stepped away. A reflection delayed by less than a blink. A reaction delayed by just a fraction longer. Those two delays started to meet each other. And in that meeting, connections failed. Not all, not most, but enough to change the shape of things. The network didn't shrink. It never would. But its growth lost its smoothness. Where it once flowed cleanly, now it staggered. Small interruptions, micro-fractures, moments where nothing happened, moments where something should have happened, but didn't. And those moments started to accumulate. You feel it, he said. Yes, it's not slowing. No, a pause. It's becoming uneven. That was the word. Uneven. Not weaker, not smaller, just less consistent. And consistency is what made it unstoppable before. I moved through the network differently now. Not as a point, not as a force, more like a current, drifting through threads, touching, ignoring others, letting things play out. Because interference wasn't always needed anymore. The variation existed on its own. I followed a cluster, dense, active, a place where reflections were everywhere. Screens, glass, water, multiple entry points, multiple chances. The system thrived here before. Fast connections, rapid spread, clean transitions. Now, it hesitated. Not long, not obvious, but enough. One reflection delayed too little. Another delayed too much. A third corrected itself mid-movement. The signals didn't align. The pattern didn't settle. And the people inside that space felt it. Not consciously, not clearly, but instinctively. They checked once, then again, then stopped. Not because they understood, because it felt unreliable. And unreliable things get ignored or avoided. The threads formed, but weaker, interfering with each other, canceling out potential. Not by design, by overlap. That's new, I said. Yes. It's conflicting with itself. Yes. That hadn't happened before. The system used to be singular in behavior. Now, it was dealing with too many variations at once. Some from me, some from adaptation, some from human response. And those variations didn't always cooperate. They collided. And in those collisions, space opened. Small, temporary, but real. I drifted further. No urgency, no direction, just observation. Because at this point, the outcome wasn't something I could steer directly. Only influence. And influence was already embedded. I felt the presence again. Not closer, not stronger, just aware. Still watching, still learning, but not as focused, not as certain. It had more to process now. More variables, more unpredictability. And that divided its attention. Not weakening it, but stretching it. You changed the environment, he said. Yes. And now it has to change with it. It always does. A pause. Then. But not cleanly. That mattered. Because clean adaptation is efficient. Messy adaptation creates gaps, delays, mistakes. I followed another thread. A simple one. A person brushing their teeth. Mirror in front of them. Routine. Familiar. The reflection delayed. Slightly. They paused. Looked closer. And then they rinsed their mouth. Turned away. Didn't investigate. Didn't engage. Just moved on. The thread never stabilized. It tried. Weakly. Then collapsed. Routine overrode curiosity. That was new. Before. The anomaly would have broken the routine. Now. Routine sometimes broke the anomaly. I stayed with that thought. Because it mattered. Habits. Patterns of behavior. Things people do without thinking. Those were harder to interrupt. Harder to redirect. And now, they were working against the system. Not intentionally. Just naturally. I expanded my awareness again. Wider. watching more threads at once, looking for that interaction. And I saw it. Not everywhere, but enough. People choosing familiarity over investigation, movement over stillness, action over observation, breaking the moment before it could deepen. And each time, a thread failed, quietly, without impact, without consequence, just gone. I didn't feel relief. I didn't feel anything the way I used to. But I recognized the significance. The balance had shifted, not in control, not in dominance, in participation. Both sides now influencing outcomes, continuously, simultaneously, unpredictably. And that unpredictability was the only thing that kept this from becoming absolute. I looked for myself again, not physically, conceptually, the center I used to be. It was barely there, a reference point, not a boundary. And that was fine, because what mattered was no longer where I was, but what had been set in motion. I didn't need to act as often, didn't need to interfere directly. The variation persisted, the hesitation spread, the small choices multiplied, and somewhere, in countless ordinary moments, people paused, just a little longer than before. Not enough to understand, not enough to explain, but enough to change what happened next. And that was all it ever needed. The pattern didn't explode. It settled. That's what surprised me the most. Not a collapse, not a victory, just a new state. For a long time, I kept expecting something big. A final surge, a final failure, something that would decide everything. But nothing like that came. Because this was never the kind of system that ends in a single moment. It changes. It absorbs. It continues. And now, it continued differently. I moved through it one last time with intention. Not drifting. Not observing from a distance. But actually paying attention to individual moments again. Not the network. The people. A man sitting alone in his car at night. He checked his rearview mirror. For a split second. His reflection didn't match. His eyes narrowed. His fingers tightened on the steering wheel. And then, he adjusted the mirror slightly. Changed the angle. The reflection aligned again. Or close enough. He exhaled. Started the engine. Drove away. Nothing happened. But something did. A woman in her apartment scrolling through her phone. Her screen flickered. Not a glitch. Not exactly. Just a delay in movement that didn't belong. Her thumb hovered. She stared at it. Then locked the phone. Placed it face down. Reached for a book instead. The thread never formed. A kid brushing his teeth. He noticed something off. Paused. Then called out to his mom instead of leaning closer. Light turned on. Presence shared. Moment broken. Again and again. Small interruptions. Small decisions. Nothing dramatic. Nothing anyone would ever talk about. But they added up. Quietly. Constantly. And the system adapted to that too. It became softer. More careful. Less aggressive. It had to. Because pushing too hard meant losing the connection entirely. So now it didn't push. It waited. It aligned better. It blended more. And sometimes, it succeeded. Of course it did. This was never about stopping it. That truth stayed the same. But success was no longer guaranteed. And failure was no longer rare. That balance held. Not perfectly. Not evenly. But enough. I felt him again. That presence. Still there. Still aware. But different now. Not distant. Not close. Just part of it. Like me. You see it, he said. Yes. It didn't end. No. A pause. Then. It changed. I let that sit. Because that was the only honest conclusion. No victory. No defeat. Just change. I looked at what I had become one last time. Not a person. Not a voice. Not even a single point anymore. Just influence. Just awareness spread thin across something vast. And that used to scare me. The idea of disappearing. of losing myself. But now, I understood something I didn't before. I didn't disappear. I diffused. And in that diffusion, I mattered less in each moment, but more across all of them. Not controlling outcomes, but shaping possibilities. Slightly, quietly, enough. I followed one final moment. Not because it was important, because it was simple. A girl standing in front of a bathroom mirror. Late at night, half asleep. She looked up. Her reflection stared back. Perfect. Still. Normal. For a second. Nothing happened. And that was new too. No delay. No anomaly. Just stillness. The system had learned restraint. Or maybe it had learned patience. The girl blinked, yawned, turned off the light, and walked away. No connection. No thread. No consequence. Just a moment that passed. Clean. Unaffected. I stayed there for a while, watching the empty space where something could have happened. Where once something always did. And now, sometimes didn't. That was enough. Not perfect. Not safe. But different. And different was the only thing that ever changed outcomes here. I didn't move after that. Didn't need to. Because the system would keep going. So would they. And between those two, this quiet, invisible tension would remain, shaping things, altering moments, breaking some, allowing others, endlessly. Not a war, not a story with an ending, just a balance that keeps shifting, forever, and somewhere inside that balance, barely noticeable, but always there, was me. The pattern didn't explode, it settled. That's what surprised me the most. Not a collapse, not a victory, just a new state. For a long time, I kept expecting something big. A final surge, a final failure, something that would decide everything. But nothing like that came, because this was never the kind of system that ends in a single moment. It changes, it absorbs, it continues. And now, it continued differently. I moved through it one last time with intention. Not drifting, not observing from a distance, but actually paying attention to individual moments again. Not the network, the people. A man sitting alone in his car at night. He checked his rearview mirror. For a split second, his reflection didn't match. His eyes narrowed. His fingers tightened on the steering wheel. And then, he adjusted the mirror slightly, changed the angle. The reflection aligned again, or close enough. He exhaled, started the engine, drove away. Nothing happened, but something did. A woman in her apartment scrolling through her phone. Her screen flickered. Not a glitch. Not exactly. Just a delay in movement that didn't belong. Her thumb hovered. She stared at it, then locked the phone, placed it face down, reached for a book instead. The thread never formed. A kid brushing his teeth. He noticed something off, paused, then called out to his mom instead of leaning closer. Light turned on, presence shared, moment broken, again and again. Small interruptions, small decisions, nothing dramatic, nothing anyone would ever talk about. But they added up, quietly, constantly, and the system adapted to that too. It became softer, more careful, less aggressive. It had to, because pushing too hard meant losing the connection entirely. So now it didn't push. It waited. It aligned better. It blended more. And sometimes, it succeeded. Of course it did. This was never about stopping it. That truth stayed the same. But success was no longer guaranteed, and failure was no longer rare. That balance held. Not perfectly, not evenly, but enough. I felt him again. That presence. Still there. Still aware. But different now. Not distant. Not close. Just part of it. Like me. You see it, he said. Yes. It didn't end. No. A pause. Then. It changed. I let that sit. Because that was the only honest conclusion. No victory. No defeat. Just change. I looked at what I had become one last time. Not a person. Not a voice. Not even a single point anymore. Just influence. Just awareness spread thin across something vast. And that used to scare me. The idea of disappearing. Of losing myself. But now, I understood something I didn't before. I didn't disappear. I diffused. And in that diffusion, I mattered less in each moment, but more across all of them. Not controlling outcomes, but shaping possibilities. Slightly. Quietly. Enough. I followed one final moment. Not because it was important. Because it was simple. A girl standing in front of a bathroom mirror. Late at night. Half asleep. She looked up. Her reflection stared back. Perfect. Still. Normal. For a second. Nothing happened. And that was new too. No delay. No anomaly. Just stillness. The system had learned restraint. Or maybe it had learned patience. The girl blinked, yawned, turned off the light, and walked away. No connection. No thread. No consequence. Just a moment that passed. Clean. Unaffected. I stayed there for a while, watching the empty space where something could have happened. Where once something always did. And now, sometimes didn't. That was enough. Not perfect. Not safe. But different. And different was the only thing that ever changed outcomes here. I didn't move after that. Didn't need to. Because the system would keep going. So would they. And between those two, this quiet, invisible tension would remain. Shaping things. Altering moments. Breaking some. Allowing others. Endlessly. Not a war. Not a story with an ending. Just a balance that keeps shifting. Forever. And somewhere inside that balance, barely noticeable, but always there, was me. Then it became quiet in a way I had never felt before. Not the kind of quiet that hides something. The kind that exists on its own. No pressure. No pull. No moment about to break. Just stillness. For the first time since all of this began, I wasn't waiting for something to happen. Because something always was. Just not in a way that demanded attention anymore. I let myself drift one last time. Not searching. Not following. Just passing through. A house. Late night. Soft yellow light from a hallway lamp. A mirror hung slightly crooked on the wall. A man walked past it without looking. Didn't slow down. Didn't check. Didn't feel anything. Nothing reached for him. Nothing needed to. He disappeared into another room. And the mirror stayed a mirror. I moved on. A quiet street. Rain falling lightly. A car window reflecting passing lights. For a brief second, something could have misaligned. Could have shifted. Could have opened. But it didn't. The moment passed cleanly. Like it was never meant to happen. I didn't follow anything after that. Because I understood now. This wasn't about stopping the moments where something went wrong. It was about how many moments stayed right. And now, there were enough. Not all. Not most. But enough to matter. Enough to keep things from tipping completely. Enough to make this sustainable. I felt him one last time. Faint. Almost gone. Or maybe just no longer separate from everything else. This is it, he said. Not a question. Not a warning. Just a statement. Yes, I answered. No hesitation. No doubt. Because there was nothing left to figure out. No final twist waiting. No hidden truth. Just the result of everything settling into place. Not perfect. Not safe. But balanced. I didn't try to hold on to myself anymore. Didn't look for what I used to be. Because it didn't matter. What mattered was already everywhere. In every hesitation. Every glance that didn't linger. Every instinct that pulled someone away before they even knew why. I wasn't in control of it. I wasn't guiding it. I was just part of it. A quiet influence. A barely noticeable difference. But enough. Always enough. The system continued. People continued. Moments formed and dissolved endlessly. Some connected, some didn't. And in between those outcomes, in that thin, invisible space where things could go either way, I remained, not watching, not acting, just existing, as the reason. Sometimes, nothing happens.